Hur stark är den amerikanska ekonomin? Och vilka är de stora utmaningarna som landets nästa president står inför? Här inne på Urban Institute i Washington sitter Donald Marron. Han är ekonomisk och politisk sakkunnig och vi hoppas att han kan svara på de här frågorna med oss. If the Democrats win, for instance, and let's say the nominee is going to get all the things done that he or she is saying today they're going to do, what are going to be the big changes with a Democratic victory?
The thing that both the presidential candidates, both Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, would like to pursue are a set of issues around raising minimum wage, expanding family leave, making higher education more affordable for families, finding ways to increase taxes on higher income Americans, possibly instituting taxes on financial transactions. Those are things that they would receive some opposition from if Congress remains in Republican hands. Presumably they'd have an opportunity to make some progress on some of those, being the president, but they would definitely be in a situation where they would likely be a lot of friction with what Congress was willing to do.
And on the other side, if it looks like Mr. Trump is going to get a ticket, if he gets everything done that he says he's going to do, what's going to happen?
So it's difficult to predict, frankly, exactly what hypothetical President Trump would actually want to do. For the others who are running, they are, politicians who have laid out traditional policy agendas. For Mr. Trump, there are a few areas where he's talked about things. So he has a very large tax cut that he's proposed. He's proposed various things about trade and obviously about immigration. But beyond that, it's actually kind of difficult to predict exactly what he would want to accomplish. He seems more interested, in making deals, and what the tenor of those would be is unclear.
As an outsider, when you look at this year's election, there seems to be a change in the candidates. On one side, you have Bernie Sanders, who has fairly good momentum. He's mostly like a traditional European social democrat. On the other side, you have Trump, who's like much more protectionistic and says the things he does. Is this why is it this time around that you see these two kind of candidates, and what does it say about the society?
There are two factors that stick out. So the first is, in the wake of the Great Recession, we have a lot of Americans who are still hurting a lot. I mean, despite the fact that the unemployment rate has come down and that we've gotten back to kind of moderate growth going forward, and in the recent past, there's still a lot of Americans who are hurting and are looking for an outlet for their concern that we're not on the right path. And second is, this giant rise of social media, which has given some candidates the ability to build up a base outside what you might think of as the conventional party lines. And so on the Democratic side, we have Senator Sanders, who is, traditionally not a Democrat, but actually a Democratic socialist, an independent in our system, but who has chosen to caucus with the Democrats. And on the right, on the Republican side, we have Donald Trump, who does not really fit a conventional view of what a GOP candidate would be. And they've both tapped in a bit into concern about the path America's on. Senator Sanders, it seems, particularly skewed towards or focused on people who are younger, right, millennials who are concerned about what America's up to. For Mr. Trump, it seems focused sort of more on older voters who are struggling with incomes and are concerned about the path we're on. And yeah, they've brought something very different to the presidential campaign than we've seen in recent rounds.
So from your perspective, where you're sitting, which economic issues do you think that the U.S. should focus most on? What are the most important issues from your perspective in the coming years?
So I think that the two most important things are, how do you raise incomes for kind of moderate and low-income Americans who have been left behind significantly in recent decades? And second, and which is closely related, is how do you make sure that productivity growth is strong? Because ultimately, if we have a more productive economy, if each hour that workers work creates more value, that's going to provide the room that's necessary for employers to be able to increase their wages and increase their compensation. And so thinking about ways to invest that will expand our productive capacity, and think about ways that will support kind of the middle of the economy and the lower income part of the economy is the most important thing.
And are you optimistic about these changes taking place?
I would say cautiously optimistic. The set of issues has risen on the agenda. People are paying more attention to it. There's been more identification of strategies that make sense. Clearly there are opportunities to invest in infrastructure here in the United States that should be pursued regardless of who wins the elections. There are changes you can make to the tax code that both sides in principle ought to agree to that would be pro-growth. And so I'm cautiously optimistic that there's a set of things that can be done that would be supportive.